but I thought we'd get started. I'm Katie Green. I'm the president of the Historical Society. Pam Richardson is the vice president, and she has jumped in to help with this speaker series this year, and I'm really delighted because it can get a lot of moving parts. And we've never had a crowd this size. And if we continue to do this, we will probably have to find another venue. But hi, David. There's seats over here. There is another talk next month. I'm not sure what the date is. The 18th. It's a Saturday in the middle of the month. Rebecca Dolan, who is writes about Dr. Alvin Chapman, and she will be here then. And then Donia Smith. Donia's here somewhere. She's going to talk about the Marshall family, which is her family that built a lot of houses, both here and in Tallahassee, in April. And then we have a gentleman whose name I won't be able to remember, who's going to talk about the history of sock chopping, just to show that we're not just Apalachicola. It's the Apalachicola area of the Historical Society.
Everywhere.
I would love it if all of you were members of the Historical Society. There are forms here. It's $15 for a person, $25 for a couple or a family, so it's not very expensive. You can do it on our website, although I think the paying ability on the website may still not be functioning right because the web page wants me to use a different pay process. But you can sign up and then you can send us a check. Well, if you sign up, we'll send you an invoice, and there are some of these forms. We have published and sell 2 books of our own. Apalachicola before 1861 by Harry P. Owens. It is a fabulous history of the town before the Union blockade of the mouth of the river, 1861. It changed the town a lot. We just published The Fever Man, which is a biography of Dr. John Gorey. It's a very, very charming little book about what his life was like in Apalachicola. He sort of walks down the road and tells stories and stuff. So it's not a dry history book at all. And so those are both available. They're $10 each. They're normally more than that, 15 or 17, I think. Fever Man is 17 and Apalachicola is 15. I do have one hardback copy of Apalachicola before 1861. We also sell coffee mugs. Our new tchotchke, which today will be $5, but they're more than that when you buy them in the museum. And we have brochures on the self-guided walking tour of the Chestnut Cemetery, and we have Rainy House rack cards if you want to remember to come back and visit the Rainy House. Any questions? Anyone else want to make any announcements? Duncan wanted to do a little housekeeping and stuff, I guess, before he actually gets started. So.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. My name is Duncan Blair. My lovely assistant here is my wife, Susan. I want to thank Katie and Pam, the video folks, the man who's not here, John Alber, who solved the mysteries of the machinery. We all know that these things don't just happen. They take effort and thought and planning and a certain amount of physical labor. So I want to introduce myself from what my point of view is. I am not an academic. I say again, not an academic. I have a couple of graduate degrees. I have 40 years in natural resource management, specifically grass. I am an enthusiastic amateur when it comes to traditional sail. I have a blog called Traditional Sail Blue Wing. which I've had for about a year. And in an act of shameless self-promotion, I will tell you that I have my business cards for traditional sale bluing.substack.com. You're welcome. It's free. I describe myself as a shade tree anthropologist, meaning an amateur. I do have a graduate degree in cultural anthropology, but from the last century. And my approach to the topic of traditional sale is less about the boats, their names, their specs, their captains, their builders, than it is about the boats, the people who sailed them, what they carried, why they carried that, where they went, and why the variety of rigs were used. I just published a blog, and I call your attention to this because I'm blogging about one of a four-masted schooner. This is a series of drawings. It says Florida's Maritime Heritage, Sketchbook of Philip A. Sawyer, 1938. This is done by the Works Progress Association. None of us here are old enough to remember that, but I know what it is. Okay. All about boats that were in Florida. I ran across a boat that, given my point of view, I loved, a four-masted schooner called Chiquimula. Chiquimula is a place name in Latin America. Chiquimula hauled goat manure from Santo Domingo on the southern coast of Hispaniola to Tampa, Florida. Now, I read that and I said, oh, that's got to be, that sounds like a topic for one of my blogs. Why goat manure? And I go into that. And yesterday, I got an email from a guy who'd read it, and he had gotten an email from, he's in Idaho. He got an email from a friend in Maine who had read it and told him, and he passed on to me, that this was going on, this was in 1928, that this was going on in the first decade of the 20th century with goat manure from Venezuela. So there's a story there. And that's the kind of thing that interests me. So be prepared for some of that. I try to ask myself, why is this important? Who cares? Recently, I ran across a statement by a guy in England who has a Whidbey Cobble, which is a 25 to 30 foot open boat design. It was used in the North Sea on the east coast of England for fishing. And here's what he said, and this is I have a cheap sign maker. The tradition is very easily lost when you don't have to make your living by it. And that really resonated with me. None of us, I doubt that few, if any of us, are making our living following the sea. But so that puts it on our shoulders to keep the tradition alive, to not let the tradition be lost, because the tradition is valuable, it is still alive, and we're fortunate to know of it, to talk about it, to share it with others. So this is what I'm focused on. Okay. Schooners.
Let me interject, because I feel badly. The Governor Stone, which is the boat that's actually on the poster for this event, the friends of the Governor Stone have come here and brought stuff that you can buy, tchotchkes and things. So you want to say something about it?
Hi, I'll take just a couple of minutes. The timing of this was perfect. Duncan is one of the Friends of the Governor Stone members, and he's done some blog writings for us that have been horrible getting on our Facebook page. But his talk today is about the history of the Governor Stone. If you really want to see that history living and breathing and being rebuilt, we're doing that over in St. Andrews area of Panama City. The Governor Stone is the last working schooner of her type on the Gulf Coast. You might see a couple others in Biloxi, but those are replicas. So when Hurricane Michael hit in 2018, she was literally demasted, capsized, and just broken and beaten. We were able to haul her out of the water. We raised matching funds to receive a $1.5 million grant from FEMA Historical Division. We were worried we would not find a shipwright to rebuild her, but we did. We were worried we would have to send her to Maine or somewhere out of state, which we didn't want to do because we knew out of sight, out of mind, nobody would be interested anymore. So we were fortunate to find a shipwright right here in St. Andrews. I say right here because I consider the Panhandle all of the same. So next Sunday from 1 to 3 Central Time, the Friends group is going to have their annual meeting. We'd love to have you join us. We've actually started taking the broken hull apart. We've purchased wood. The lofting, if you're familiar with that, or if Duncan talks about it, the lofting is where you actually draw the plans on the floor. And then you take and you build the boat up. So as we're taking this old broken hull apart, we'll be building, I say a new hull, but we're able to use about 60% of the wood. So she will be original in that regard. We're going to source as many old parts as we can. And that way, because of FEMA Historical, we have to use as much of the original resources as we can. Being built in Pascagoula, they used pine, they used white oak, juniper, and cypress. And we've been able to source that from Pascagoula and right in the backyard, as I say, up in Mariana. So yes, we have hats and t-shirts and coffee cups. There's information about the Governor Stone here. If you happen to take any of our ship store booty home with you, if you would be so kind as to fill this out, and you'll get a 1-year complimentary membership with the Friends group. And then you'll get an email and you'll get up-to-dates. The Friends group also, when we're on the water with the Governor, you get to go sailing for free. In the meantime, our shipwright, Anderson Barnes, is offering us the use of his 42-foot sailboat or his 14-foot racing sailboat, which is awesome to be on, just to kind of tease you and give you a taste of what's coming. So you'll be privy to all of those things. When we get her back on the water, we're going to have a gala event, week-long, and you'll get special opportunities to take part in those. So I will give it back to Mr. Duncan. And I'll be outside with the ship store stuff after the talk.
And also make sure you turn your phones down.
Okay.
I just did mine.
Can we have the lights back on, please? Raise your hand if you ever heard of Joshua Slocum. Okay. My wife's sick of hearing about Joshua Slocum. Joshua Slocum was the first man to single-handedly circumnavigate the planet. He did it in the last few years of the 19th century. He had been a long-time sea captain and found himself out of a job, put out of a job by steam, and he was given by an old fishing captain a wreck of a boat, oyster drudger, as they say, that was famously in a pasture under a cherry tree in, Two Dot, Massachusetts. I don't know, it's all the same to me, Pam. He rebuilt. He had a bucket full of spikes, an adze, a saw, and a axe, and he rebuilt the spray. He took out her centerboard, he put in a keel, and he rebuilt the spray. But she, like the Governor Stone, was still the spray. No matter how much new timber was put into her, almost at least 150 years after her original construction, she was still the spray. So that's the same with the Governor Stone. The Governor Stone's been through a lot. I am going to talk about the Governor Stone, but I'm going to talk about some other stuff too. Okay? So here we go. Fast, agile, and practical. Schooner is a rig. It can be on any number of hulls. There are variations in the schooner rig. There are topsail schooners, there are bald-headed schooners, and I hope we can all agree that bald is beautiful. There are four topsail schooners. I'll show you a picture of one of those. In the fruit trade in southern England, there are staysail schooners. There are terrapin schooners. So the schooner is a rig. I'm going to show you the rig, explain it from my perspective, and then show you a number of different hulls that it went on, doing a number of different jobs in a number of different places under a number of different conditions. Okay, one of those places is Apalachicola, and I'll explain I'll do it right now. Here, the smaller is a nautical chart of Apalachicola. The numbers are the depths in feet, not meters, not fathom, but the depths in feet of the water at mean low tide. So, worst possible scenario, okay? And you can see they're pretty shallow. Typically, in the cotton era, when ships came here to carry the cotton back either to the Northeast or to England, those seagoing ships could not safely enter Apalachicola Bay because it's so shoal. This is to show you exactly how shoal it is. This shows, because it's modern, shows the dredged channel for the intracoastal waterway and the channel out through the Sykes Cut, the government cut. Obviously, those didn't exist in the 1830s and 40s. So here was all this cotton stacked up on the docks down on Water Street, worth a lot of money. And offshore, outside the island, were the ships that were to carry it back. So what was called upon, what was needed, were lighters, like a cigarette light, spelled like cigarette lighters, and these were shoal draft ships or barges sometimes in the steam era that could be towed by a steam tug, but in 1830 they were small schooners that were shoal draft. They had centerboards. So when they heard that board start to drag in the bottom, they could lift it up. You know, there's only two kinds of sailors: those who've run aground and those who say they haven't. Okay? So to avoid that embarrassment and to get the ships offshore loaded and go make some money, you needed lighters. You needed a middleman, so to speak, in that cargo chain from the origin of the cotton downstream, off on the dock, weighed, baled, whatever, and then out offshore to the cargo ship that would carry it back to its final destination. Okay, let me get my cheater here. Let's have the first lights off, please. Okay, this is the Governor Stone. This is the typical schooner rig. Two masts, either both of the same height or the aftermost mast, the back one, the rear one, slightly taller than the front. In this case, they're equal height. Sometimes they have top masts. I think she has top masts, but they're struck. They're not up right now for topsails. Topsails are small, but they're very effective because there's more. The wind aloft is cleaner than the wind alew. Okay? Be cleaner in the sense that it's more constant, consistent, not disturbed by friction with the surface of the water. I should say wind aloft, wind alow. So that's why you see topsails. I'm going to show you another example of topsails. Okay, next one, please. This is the same schooner rig seen from aloft. This is a pinky schooner from a design from the early 19th century, built in 2008 in Essex, Massachusetts, by a sixth generation.
Worried about these.
Excuse me, a sixth generation boat builder named Harold Burnham, who has been awarded by the National Endowment of Arts. And he's a boat builder. They're wonderful videos on Harold Burnham. Check it out. The Pinky was used for fishing, mostly fishing by lines off the boat. See this long? The joke is that this long, it's not even a taffrail, this long overhanging stern was used as a head by the sailors, irrespective of that. Small, burdensome, 2 sails, 2 masts, still a schooner. Okay, next one, please. This is a boat called the Selina Beale, built in 1909. She, last I heard, was in Harold Burnham's yard in Essex being rebuilt. She looks like a knife in the water. And you see she does not have a bowsprit. This is what's called a knockabout. The forestay attaches to the stem, and if it's a sloop, it can be on a sloop, it's a knockabout sloop. This is a knockabout schooner. She was probably a working boat. I don't know a whole lot about her. You can see she's got low topsides. It would be easy to launch a dory or pull fish out here. 1909. Okay. Oh, let's talk about fast. You all, can we have the lights back, please? Do you know about the Bernoulli effect?
Yes.
Okay. Can we, well, we can do it here. You saw it better with the Pinky. You can see the wind coming off this sail. The windward side of this sail is going around the leeward side of that sail and on. The wind coming off the windward side of this sail is going around here. The Bernoulli effect, which is named after a 16th century physicist from Switzerland, showed how an airfoil, this is an airfoil, looking at an airplane wing. Okay, so these are airfoils in the vertical. So when the wind goes, 2 particles of wind, one on this side, one on the other side, the one on the curved side has to go faster to catch up with the one on the other side. That means that the boat is literally, if it's got a resistance built in with a keel or a centerboard, pulled into the wind at an angle, okay? So you take this, you multiply, it's a multiplier effect of aerodynamics. You divide it up into small, manageable pieces that 1 or 2 crewmen can handle. And it's fore and aft. It's not a squaresail like this, with guys up here on foot ropes hanging over the yards trying to set the sails. All the work is done from the deck, smaller sails, aerodynamically superior. Smaller sails means smaller crew means lower overheads. Being able to go to weather more efficiently than a square rigger, not as efficiently as a modern Bermuda-headed sail, but more so than the square rigs, squaresails, which were the correct comparison at the time, means that it can get from here to there in, say, 3 tacks, where a square rigger would take 5. So faster, more agile, and able to get in places that square riggers can. There were schooners used on the coast of California in the lumber trade. They called dog hole schooners, because there are little narrow harbors on the northern coast of California where there's a lot of timber, but there's not much of or any coastal plain. So there's steep, rocky, a dog hole. You had to get in there, load up the timber, and get out. And this was a girl who was going to do it for you. Okay, next one, please. Lights, please. This speaks to water depth. This is a ketch, a Herreshoff ketch, a beautiful boat by definition, because it was built by L. Francis Herreshoff, or designed by L. Francis Herreshoff. It has been in Apalachicola. It's in the yard in Apalachicola now, up by the mill pond. You see how deep she is. Her draft is, I've never measured it, but it's at least 5 feet. My boat is here, our boat is here, so I look at her and rub her with a pork chop bone every once in a while. But she's a deep draft, fixed keel, outside fixed keel, at least 5 feet. That is a commonplace for ocean-going sailing vessels. But it's completely dysfunctional for the waters here. It's completely dysfunctional for the waters in Galveston Bay and Padre Island and a lot of places on the East Coast up around Long Island. Shoal draft. And it's completely dysfunctional in places like the Netherlands, where they have a different way of solving the need to have a drop keel. They have lee boards instead of center boards. So a schooner that has the agility and the speed because of her sail plan needs to have, depending on the water she works in, I'll show you some schooners with underbodies like this, needs to be able to go into shoal water. Okay, next one, please. Think of the Bernoulli effect here. You can see it. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. More goes better, closer to the wind, more weatherly. And because it's fore and aft, the sheets, as we all know, the sheets can be on a horse to slide back and forth. So when you tack, you just turn. You don't have to, you have to let go up here unless it's on a horse. But these just go. You don't have to call out all the lads from down below and struggle around and curse and fall over everybody and have a big crew. You can, it just goes. It goes. Okay, next, please. Okay, this is a fruit schooner from the south coast of England. In the 1830s to the 1860s, there was a big trade from the south coast of England to a variety of places, to the Mediterranean. Boats like this that had to go down through past the English Channel, down through the Bay of Biscay, I'm going to show you a map in a minute, through the Straits of Gibraltar, down the Mediterranean, and they would go to places like Greece, and they would get dates and olives and currants and raisins that could be transported back because they were dry. They would also go to the Azores in the mid-Atlantic and get oranges, which they would take back and make a lot of money on with them to the upper middle class households of London. They would also go to the Bahamas and bring back pineapples. When they brought back pineapples, they would install temporary racks in their holds so that the individual pineapples could have airspace between them. They tried to keep the hatches open for ventilation. And the belief was, because even in the 1830s and 1860s, there was still steam was coming up. There was a belief among the merchants that steam-powered boats damaged the fruit, either with the heat or the smoke or whatever. So a lot of guys built a lot of boats, bought a lot of fruit schooners, and some of them are much more dramatic and noble than this. They're like small clipper ships. And you can see she's got a square sail, a square fore topsail. So if she goes down the Med, let's have a next one, please. She comes into here's Gibraltar. She's come from up here, across the Bay of Biscay, down here. She comes into the Med, and there's a westerly blowing. She can not only wing out her gaff sails, she can set that square sail and just run down here. Or if she's coming back and there's an easterly blowing. Okay, so here are, this is currants, raisins, figs, oranges, lemons, Naples, olive oil, maize, marble, not a fruit, obviously, wine, hazelnuts. I can't read that. And they also were, here's southern Spain, Portugal, port wine from Portugal, big trade for centuries. Port wine from Oporto in northern Portugal to London. I wrote a blog about this called Rabello boats. Rabello boats are the boats that brought the wine down a river through the rapids. So deep water, speed is important, time is important, therefore speed is important. Deep water here, deep water all the way back to southern England. So a boat with an underbody like the Herreshoff Ketch was what you wanted. It made sense, it was practical. Here and other places, not practical. So you got to put the rig you want on the hull that works if you want to combine speed with agility, with practicality. Okay, next one. This is one of my favorites. This is the Alma. Alma is a scow schooner, topsail schooner, built in San Francisco, California in 1890, I believe. There were about 40 scow schooners working exclusively in San Francisco Bay. And San Francisco Bay is a confluence of 4 or 5 bays from a very large estuary. lot of stuff going on. She is now still sailing. She's become a dude boat. More about dude boat. A dude boat is a boat that carries passengers for pay. She is owned by the National Park Association, and they have a national park at the one of the docks in San Francisco. It's a big deal. They have other ships there. They have a C.A. Thayer, a lumber schooner. But they take Alma out and sail her with the public on board. They carried oyster shells. They carried cattle, sheep, granny's pigs, you name it, back and forth across San Francisco Bay, because the Golden Gate Bridge was not built until the 1930s. Okay, now the other thing they carried was hay. Think of a city of, let's say, 100,000 people. A city almost anywhere, but especially in the late 19th century. All the personal conveyance, all the taxi cabs, all the trolley cars, all the delivery wagons, all the mail carriers, most importantly, all the beer wagons, would be pulled by horses. Everything that we have today in this time was pulled by horses. It was the 19th century. That's what they had to work. That was tractive power, okay? And those horses had to be up. They weren't turned out on 40 acres of pasture, which wouldn't have lasted very long anyway, every night. They had to be up and stable so they could go to work the next day. They could be fed and go to work the next day. Be available, go, let's go. They were fed primarily hay, probably some grain, some concentrates for energy, but mostly hay. So how did that hay get there? Next one, please. This is the Annie. Same deal, just like the Alma. Now's the time to talk about their hull design. These scow schooners had a hull like a cigar box, literally. Flat, square, shallow, rectangular, shallow. They had a bowsprit, they were schooner rigged, topsails, but the hull was flat and it had a big honking centerboard, like the Governor's Stone, for work in shoal waters. Because they had to sail from the city of San Francisco all the way up past Alcatraz, past place I always wish I lived in.
Sausalito.
Sausalito, thank you. Yeah, actually now I'm glad I don't.
Go up the Sacramento River.
Sausalito. They went to the Sacramento River Delta. They went through the Carquinez Strait, where our son had an apartment, way up to the Sacramento River Delta. There were giant meadows there, fed by the fresh water of the Sacramento River and inundated with mud, like the Nile, to bring nutrients. And that's where all this hay, or most of the hay, was cut and loaded on. So who's going to ask me how they steered with that? Okay. Well, I wasn't there. I'm an old guy, but I'm not that old. What I have seen are pictures and reliable artists' representations of platforms. This is the bow, I believe. Platforms that came up high and that they re-rigged the ropes for the steering, connecting the wheel to the rudder. They still have sail area up here. They would reef the sails, but instead of bringing the gaff down, they raised the boom up. So the sail was above, some part of it was above the hay, and then they could fly the topsail as well. And because they were flat, when the tide went out, and there's a big tidal range in San Francisco, they could sit on the bottom. They could take the bottom, take the ground, pull up the centerboard. You're not gonna spend the night like this. She's flat. You can load her when she's flat. You're tied up to the dock, it's even easier. And then when the tide comes in, she lifts up. You drop the centerboard. Don't ask me how. There's some magical arrangement or a slot, or you'd send a guy down in there. I don't know. But they get the centerboard down and sail back. And there, all the hay for all the horses was distributed by horses from the dockside. And you can imagine, given the number of horses and the amount of hay each boat could carry. See, there's another one over there. This went on for a long time. So practical, shoal draft, schooner rig. Shoal draft, she can take the ground because she's got a centerboard, and she's a workhorse. The fruit schooner, if she were a horse, would be a thoroughbred racehorse, because she had high value, low volume cargoes. This is either a Percheron draft horse or a mule. Okay, bulky, strong, not maybe particularly pretty, but just what you need. Now, I'm going to jump ahead and just take a minute. There is a video. You can see videos on the YouTube wormhole on the Alma. And there's one called BAADS, B-A-A-D-S, Bay Area Association of Disabled Sailors. And they go down to the national park and they go out on this boat. So it shows them on a sunny, breezy day. And these are people with crutches, on crutches, with prosthetic devices, with walkers, with wheelchairs, with service dogs. And this is the perfect boat for them. It's flat, it's stable, it's not gonna go over, heel over like a racing sled and send everybody into the scuppers. She's stable, wheelchair, dog, whatever. And it's wonderful to see that. And that's completely serendipitous. She wasn't, there were no, the only prosthetic devices around when she was built was a wooden leg. But to see that coming together in a niche for a new purpose for a boat that's 130 years old is pretty cool. And I think that's what's happening, going to happen, or has happened to some degree already with the Governor's Stone. Okay, so water depth, you deal with that with shoal draft and centerboards. Fast, you deal that with the rig. Agile, you deal with that with the rig. Practical, again, you're back to water depth. Okay, let's go to the next one, please. This is another type of scow schooner. This is in Texas at Port Aransas. This, you see, the Alma's bow looks like this. She's got a much more defined bow. She's got a swept up stem. There's going to be a cutwater and a bowsprit here. There were lots of these scow schooners in Texas for the same reason they're in San Francisco Bay, shoal water. Except in Texas, they call them Butt-Head schooners. Why Butt-Head? Because it's Texas. That's why. In 1941, a very well-known and famous marine architect and archaeologist, and historian rather, Howard Chappell, found the remains, the derelict remains of one of these on the beach in Galveston. And he took the lines. He was great at doing that. And he drew a set of lines. And this boat was built years ago, 20 years ago. To my knowledge, she's not yet in the water. She's changed hands several times, but she is a different kind of scow schooner, not a little more elegant, and not as blunt-bowed and clunky as Alma. And she is built with plywood and fiberglass cloth embedded in epoxy resin, I believe. Okay, next. This is the Governor Stone again. So the Governor Stone, you know, compared to some of these others, is small, and that's one of the things that makes her agile. She's got the right rig. She's about, where's Colleen?
Outside.
42 feet long?
40 foot on deck.
40 foot on deck.
20 foot bowsprit.
And 12 foot beam?
20 foot bowsprit.
And beam?
18, I think.
Okay. I've got some drawings of her coming up. So this was, I'm trying to find the right equine equivalent, and I don't have it. This is going around in shoal draft, jack of all trades, just like very similar to the Texas Butt-Head. More elegant, more beautiful, but very similar. Shoal draft, not flat bottom, but shoal draft. Centerboard, long centerboard. And remember, centerboards are useful. They are not only an automatic sounding device. When you hear it drag, pull it up. If you need to come into someplace, and there are records of this being done, you come into someplace, you drop it, and you just, it's like dragging your foot. You're just slowing her down, taking the way off, slowing her down, letting that board drag. Just like you can scandalize the sails and do things to take the foot off the gas with that. So I'll tell you what I know about the Governor Stone, which is not as much as I wish it were. Let's have the next one, please. Okay, here we are. There's Apalachicola and the Laguna Madre of the Texas coast, the huge lagoon caused by Padre and other islands that it goes all the way down past the border and down into Mexico in the state of Tamaulipas. Starts over here. So that's scow schooner Butt-Head country. Runs about like this from the Sabine River down about, I think, a couple hundred miles south of where the Rio Grande comes out. So these are the waters where where the Governor Stone and her sisters worked. Okay, next. Here's a bird's eye view of the Governor Stone deck plan. This is, obviously these are the masts, and this is almost the entire length of the centerboard runs almost this entire length. And it would be hoisted with a lanyard on a tackle, either on the mast or raised up here. I think her proportions are about 3 to 1 length to beam. And very small cabin. Okay, next. This is the one that I like because the only time I was aboard the Governor Stone was when she was here and I went below decks, and I was struck by, if this is 1, 2, this is 4 feet. So this at most is 5 feet, and that's not to the deck beams, but to the bottom of the hatch. So there's not all that much room down here. So what was it like to load her and unload her? It was hot and sweaty. And what would she carry? Would she carry loose cargo? Probably. Would she carry bales of stuff? Would she carry a deck cargo? Probably. These boats were fungible. You could nail stuff up, put up panels, and turn the sheep out there. Although in Texas you couldn't have sheep, but there's a lot of stuff you can do in these kind of work boats. These are the FedEx delivery vans, the step vans, the UPS, the plumbers vans, the 14-foot goosenecks, if you haul livestock. They did all of those things. And so did boats like the Alma, the scow schooner Alma. Okay, next please. Now this is a little sad, but I'm going to show it to you anyway. I ran across this, or I guess Susan ran across this. You can't see this very well, but right down here it says Governor. And this is thought, according to the caption, to be the Governor Stone back in the days when she was an oyster carrier. So I'm showing you this for several reasons. 4-mast, no mainmast, deck house, dirty, beat up, no bowsprit. That makes it easier to get in close to a dock. Loaded with oysters and all the debris associated with them and this smell. But she's still working. Yeah. And this was the case with a lot of the boats. A lot of the boats in this book I showed you, the sketches from the guy from the Works Progress Association, had come from, some were built here, some were built in Pascagoula or Biloxi, but a lot of them came from either the Bahamas or Key West, and some of them from the Northeast. And they came down and they were used for sponge boats. They were used for oyster boats. The hull and a 2-banger engine was all that you needed. And we all, if you know about anything about the Governor Stone, you know that during Prohibition, she was also used to haul rum in illegally from the Bahamas, I believe. So feel bad about the way she looks, but feel good about the fact that she was still working, and because of that, to some degree, she's still with us today. And a lot of these boats aren't. The Alma was saved by the federal government. Okay, next. This is what I'm going to end with, and I have to consult my would you find the last page with a Wyoming on it? It should be the very last page. Okay, thank you. This is in Bath, Maine, just maybe a quarter or half a mile north of the Bath Iron Works. This is the grounds of the Maine Maritime Museum. And it was, in the late 19th, early 20th century, a shipyard belonging to a firm called Percy and Small. And when they went out of business, they just walked away. They left the building with a lofting floor. They left all the tools, and there weren't a whole lot. The buildings, everything. And I don't know the details of how the Maine Maritime Museum got it, but they did. And you can see there's a slight slope, and there's a river here. And what's the name of the river, Pam, that flows through Bath? Okay, I don't know. Anyway, they launched her right here. They built all their boats here. They would build 2 or 3 at a time. These sheds over here have a wonderful collection of small craft. And this is a monumental sculpture, I say, of the schooner Wyoming, which was built right here. 6-masted, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's her stem. There's her bowsprit. There's her taffrail. And there's her stern and rudder. She was the largest wooden boat ever built. She was built in 1909. Her specs are 350 feet on deck, 50-foot beam, 30-foot draft, a crew of 11, plus a captain, 2 mates, a cook, and an engineer. She had 22 sails. She was lost at sea on the 11th of March, 1924, with all hands off the coast of Chatham, Massachusetts. There's a, you want to, I know someone wants to know, what did they have an engineer for? They had steam donkeys. A steam donkey is not an angry donkey. It's a small engine. I'm writing about this with this Chiquimula thing, and you can see one only if you look at my blog. They had a gypsy on them, so you could raise the sails, because human beings couldn't raise these sails. You could raise an anchor chain. You could pump the bilges, all with a steam donkey. And she, late in her life, and when she went aground, when she was lost, was hauling coal. She could haul 6,000 tons of coal from Virginia to the Northeast. So, as late as 1920s and later, with the Chiquimula, they were using steam in conjunction with sail. Steam to do the heavy work and to keep down the crew cost. Sail to keep down the energy cost. So this is the Wyoming. It's wonderful. Because it's black and white, it doesn't do it justice. But they built this wonderful, I call it a sculpture. And it's obviously it's minimalist, but it lets you absorb the scale of this thing. Okay, and she could obviously with a draft of 30 feet, she needed some deep water to go into. Okay, any questions or comments? Okay.
What was the